name's Eddie Rutkoski, and I've been going to this church since it's formed. I consider John a great pastor and a really good friend, and he asked me if I would deliver a message today, and I'm a little bit nervous about it, but the first service went okay, and I hope that I can bless you guys. Let's pray real quick, and I'll get started. Lord, I ask that you bring your Holy Spirit into this room so that we can all learn from your words, grow in our faith, just find the beauty in all that you give to us as Christians, all as believers. I just hope that my words are worthy, that they reach someone, that they inspire them to find a connection at the church, but also a greater closeness to you. Amen. So my message is called Save to Serve. You might be wondering why there's keys and a phone and a wallet there. For me, I'm kind of known in my house as someone who loses their keys, loses their phone, loses everything. It's constantly around my house. And please, nobody say, you should just put it in a special place, because that is not going to happen. I've lived my life for 55 years without that happening. But today, I have my phone, I have my keys, I have my wallet. Somewhere, yeah, right here. Where's my wallet? And so I have everything that I need to get out and get going. And before I get started into the meat of my message, I'd like to say that we're called by God to be disciples. Not disciples in like we're in trouble, but the root word being discipline and working hard at getting better at stuff. Our faith requires that we try to get more proficient at 4 things: prayer, being in the Word, and going to church is one of them, and then worship. And the last one is where the get going part comes in. It's service. And when we want to be like Jesus, we work at doing those kinds of things. We're constantly in our Bibles. We're constantly praying. We're looking to the Lord for guidance. And when we feel ready to go, when we have our phone, wallet, and keys, then we're allowed to go out into the world and to make a difference. And I think that we're called to do that as disciples. So our walk isn't just about being for ourselves. I think that serving is the fruit of Christianity. It's like where we really get something out of it, not just for us, but to glorify God and to also serve our community and serve the people who God has called us to love. It's more about than just you. And when you realize that, there's way more out there for you than you would ever imagine. And I'll get into my message, and it'll explain like when I went through some hard times with my family and how it's changed my life for the better, and it always does. Being in God's Word, being faithful in little ways and just saying yes to God is always worked. And so I put it this way in your notes. It says, we are saved to serve. And Jesus saves us. He died on the cross for us. He cleans us up. He mends our hearts, and it's all for His glory and His purposes. Sometimes we don't even see what those things are. We're saved from sin, which everybody knows. But Jesus also saves us for something. In Ephesians 2:10, it says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." Now, 100% hear me on this. We're saved by the grace of God. We can't earn His salvation. That's something that's disputed, with Catholicism and Christianity. But we know as Christians, we're saved, and it has nothing to do with us. And in fact, in Ephesians 2:8-9, it says, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is a gift from God, not by works, so that no one can boast." And I love that, because it kind of takes it off of us, and all we have to do is believe in Jesus as our Savior, and we're given such a gift by God. So serving does not result in salvation. You were served in part to be a disciple. So For me, as I stand on the stage, having lived my life, I can honestly say to you, I am so thankful and so blessed and so loved by God, and I hope that you guys feel that too. I see so many familiar faces who are here on a weekly basis, hoping to see John preach and not me, but I get that, and I'm fine with it. It doesn't hurt my feelings at all. I love the guy. I love to hear his words, but the fact that you're here on a Sunday, and my son actually said something funny to me. He goes like, it's kind of low, like not too many people here, and I said, well, it's summer, and he said, well, it's not a restaurant, like we're out of season. It's like there's not a grouper special we're waiting for. So I thought that was hilarious, but I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're plugged into this, because I do think that God's given me something to tell you, and I hope you're blessed by it. I rely on God on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, often on a minute to minute. I find myself slipping back into my old ways and just being crabby, being grouchy, those kinds of things. And I lean on God and I rely on Him to remind me who I am, and that I'm a child of God, and that I need His forgiveness and His mercy. And I think that the natural response when you feel that way is gratitude. If you feel gratitude, you can hold that up as a shield, and gratitude is a way of protecting you from getting too far down, getting where you're just woe is me all the time. Everybody knows people like that. I might be the opposite of that. It's like knowing God and having gratitude gives me the shield where I'm not too big for my britches, and I don't try to do everything myself. My wife knows this. I'm a really do-it-yourself kind of person, even if I have no skill in whatever that is that I'm doing myself. And it kind of works out, but that doesn't work in life. You need to rely on God and count on Him to be there for you, have faith in Him, and when you do that, the only thing that you can feel is gratitude, and I've seen Him work in my life so many times. It says, the depth of your awareness of God's goodness and mercy is usually a great indicator of your gratitude toward God, and that's by Pastor Tim Gilligan, who's actually my mom's pastor, and such a wise pastor. Whenever we travel and we go visit my mom in Ocala, we'd go to his church, and what I loved about the guy was he has these brilliant things to say, but he grew up in Williston, Florida, barefoot and as country as you can be, so he kind of speaks both languages. And so I don't know anybody who's ever heard of him, and he's like our own Pastor John. It's like you listen to people, and every week you come and you feel like this message is for me. And so anyway, to get into a little bit of my life, or the time that I struggled is, I was telling my small group about this recently. I was working with a friend of mine from high school, after we had graduated, and I'm a graphic designer, and he was in direct marketing, and he was a really smart guy, and he always made a lot of money, so I came to work with him, and we were doing great, and, he had some, I wouldn't say he was shady, but I would say he was shady adjacent. I couldn't really prove anything that he was doing was wrong, and we were just doing vitamins and supplements and and things like that, and we were working for some pretty big companies, so I thought it was all on the up and up. I was making really good money. I had a cool car. I had a tiny phone, because in 2001 you wanted a small phone, not there was no screens on them, so the smaller the better. It seemed like that's when you had a fancy phone, and so I had thought that I had everything going on for me, and I would go to church sometimes, but I felt like I had gotten away from God, and I definitely had that kind of feeling like I was doing it all on my own. And so one day we heard a knock on the door, and there were the postal inspector from the state of Rhode Island. There were two Pinellas County sheriffs and an FBI agent, and they said, step away from your computers. And we were just like, what is going on? We were just working in Dunedin at this little office, and we had no idea, at least I had no idea what was going on. Maybe Mr. Shady Adjacent had, some clue. But so they investigated him, and I won't go into everything that had happened. It really kind of came of nothing, and some of it was, a mistake. But during the time that they were investigating him, he basically crawled up into the fetal position of, and rightfully so. He was very scared. He had to hire lawyers and do all these, kinds of things. And I was out of a job, and now for a while I thought I was hotshot. I had it all, taken care of. I had my cool car to pay for. I had a mortgage. I had my tiny phone bills, which were not so tiny back then. And, I had a lot of responsibility. Liza and I, she was still in college, and we had our son Sam, who is 3 years old, maybe 4 years old. And And it was a tough time for us. It was like very instantly, I went from feeling on top of the world to feeling very humbled and humiliated, if you know what I mean. Like I felt like I couldn't get a job really, because maybe sometimes when I would go for a job, I felt like that's kind of beneath me because I was making, all this money, and I felt like I was, really accomplishing something in the professional world. And if you go through those times that you feel broke, and we were broke and broken and humiliated, I feel like there is a beauty in that. And I don't wish that anybody goes through those times, but just life, everybody goes through those hard times where just things aren't going right for you, whether it's something that's going on in your family or, looking at, being out of work or, stuff just comes and hits you. But the beauty that I find in that is, two things. First, the gift of relying on God in a more urgent way, in a more way where you're really calling out to him a lot more. I would go to bed at night and worry about money, worry about like how things were going to work out, and I would call on God a lot more in my life then than I had before. And then the second thing is, once you go through that period and God works his glorious ways in your life and maybe turns you around and picks you up out of that situation or just that short season, you're grateful. And that's the only way that you can respond, is that you feel grateful that God pulled you out of this season. And sometimes it's like, and you have to be in the season yourself to know why it's so, like how it's God. Like everybody has these things where they could tell somebody their testimony, and then somebody might say, this is just a coincidence, this was just this, you just worked hard, you just like whatever. But there have been definitely supernatural parts of God intervening in my life, and I'll get into those later. So anyway, time went on, and we got plugged into a church, and we liked it a lot, and that kind of made things easier. We were attending regularly, and I felt like I was growing stronger in my faith. We liked people that were at the church. We got, a little bit plugged in there. And then I have a family. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and they're all strong believers. And they're much better human beings than I am, I have to say. And so they helped support me through this time financially, but just mostly, sure, they were praying for me this entire time, praying for me and Liza and, our family. And, I felt like I didn't really even deserve it because I was the youngest baby, and I was a little bit like kind of a punk, a little bit of a brat. So when they would help me, that was very humbling for me too, because these brothers who used to pin me down and try to spit in my face or whatever, they were now, lending me money just so I could pay my mortgage. And like I said, it was very, very humbling for me. I've grown, I've matured. They picked on me and they started it. So maybe I'm not over it 100%. But and a little bit of time went by. Liza and I both got jobs. I got a job cleaning pools. And I liked it because I would see it on TV, and it just seemed kind of like kind of a cool job, and I would work on my tan. But trust me, if you see these guys, don't think it's a cool job. You're carrying a 16-foot metal pole in the middle of lightning storms sometimes, and then you're also going into these pool box rooms where they have all of the electronic equipment, and you step down the ladder and you're standing in like a foot of water, and there's wires and stuff all hanging out. I never really told Liza that beforehand because I didn't want her to worry, but now I want her to be impressed. But Liza got a job at a daycare center, and it was great because it was kind of a fancy daycare, and they let her teach there and our son go there, and so that was amazing, except for it was down in almost near St. Petersburg, which we thought was terrible because we lived in Dunedin, and we were just like, we're broke and we can't spend the kind of money it takes to keep driving back and forth. I mean, gas was $2 a gallon. That's a lot. And so we were like, we were just like, how are we going to make this work? And we still had questions, but we knew that God was working. And in some ways, we had no idea. And that isn't that the way that God works. It's like you in retrospect, you can see all the things that he was doing, and I'll tell you, a couple of examples of these. The main one is during that time, God knew long before us that we were going to have a baby, Oscar, who's back there running the slides, who's healthy now, but he was born 2 months early, very premature, and he had to be at All Children's Hospital. And so now this thing where we wanted to be up in Dunedin, it was working out perfectly because I was cleaning pools down near All Children's. Liza was much closer to All Children's. We had the support of the teachers and the other moms at the daycare, and it was just like such an amazing thing, like something that we thought was, kind of horrible and it drove us nuts. When we started saying yes to God in all these little ways, it just worked out for the better. Our hearts began to change when we grew in our faith, and we were still eating $6. I remember we used to eat $6 pizzas every Wednesday at Hungry Howie's instead of going out. And yeah, Wacky Wednesday, that's what it was. And I still like Hungry Howie's to this day. Don't get me wrong, but we were praying. We were in the Bible more than I have ever been, and it built our marriage stronger. And in that time, Liza would play the guitar, and I played the drums a little bit. And we would practice in our garage, drive our neighbors crazy. And we weren't playing worship music, really. We were playing like alt rock, and we were, just trying to like work it out. But this is what I'm talking about. Who would have thought these many years later, God would need a worship band, and for his church, and we would have the skills, we would have the wallet, keys, and phone of having, musical ability, and a family like with our daughter House, playing with us. Who would have thought back then, and God would have thought it, but we had no idea. So just to kind of close up the story, eventually Oscar was born, and he needed to be at All Children's, and we needed a place to be there for him. Eliza still had some sickness based on when she was giving birth, and so she was in rough shape, and we needed a landing spot, and that's where Ronald McDonald House came in. It was right down there too, and they allowed us to stay there while we took care of our sick son. It became, something that we were so thankful for, that we vowed that we would return there and we would serve dinners and stuff. And if you're wondering what Ronald McDonald House is, it's actually a place where they train you to be a clown. You get like a big wig, and they put on like makeup. You get the big red shoes, the whole deal. So. I'm just kidding. It's just like, it's basically like a big hotel. Whenever you see that at McDonald's and you give money, it's a big hotel, and they have, people come prepare meals for you. They allow you to stay there, sleep there, and it's just amazing. And another way that God has worked is, I think I mentioned that at one of the staff meetings we had here, and then my group went and served, and we served in a much bigger way because we had more people than just my family. And then now several small groups at Journey have served at Ronald McDonald House, and it's been such a blessing, for me to go back after all these years with now my son Oscar's healthy, 19-year-old kid, and it's just amazing how God has worked in that. And I know I keep harping on that, but since we're in church, it's important. That's who we're here to glorify, people. In 1 Samuel 12:24, it says, "You must honor the Lord and truly serve him with your heart, all your heart. Remember the wonderful things that he did for you." When we're remembering how good God is to us, that should cause us to want to serve him. And how do we serve God? We serve his people. He puts us in front of them all the time. The guy that's cleaning pools, the girl that's working at the daycare, the people. I said this in first service. I always had such a heart. I've never really even had to ride on a bus, but when I ever see people and they're riding bus early in the morning or late at night, and I'm thinking, where do they need to be? And it's going to take them an extra hour or 2 hours to get there. They're going to be late for their job. They're going to be early for their job, and they're just killing this time. It's something that just runs through my mind, and I'll get to that point of how serving opens your heart to those kinds of things. The first I want to share is there's 3 principles for serving. And the first one is have a servant's heart. When we have our phone, wallet, and keys, we're ready to go. And we have faith, we're strong in our faith, and we're strong believers. And that puts us in a place where we can help others. And where do we need to serve? The answer is everywhere. Can everybody say everywhere? Can everybody say everywhere louder? All right, cool. All right, that was better than first service. The heart of a servant says things like this, like, how can I help? And some of us have a natural ability just to jump right in, like superhero gene, I would call it. I don't have that, but I'll tell you a little story. One time I was at the International Mall with my wife and my younger son, Sam, and he was probably about 5 at the time. And we were eating ice cream cones, and we saw this lady walking across the hall, and she was walking pretty fast, and she tripped and she fell, and she just ate it. I mean, like her purse went everywhere, and she was okay, but all the stuff from her purse came, and I was like, whoa, and I looked to tell Liza and Sam, and I was like, did you just see that? And they were gone. And I looked back up, and it was like in seconds, they were over there helping her up and putting everything back in her purse, and it was amazing, and I just thought, like, I don't do that. Both my sons actually have that gene, and Liza has a superhero gene. Hollis and I we might have to work on that a little bit. But she said she does serve, but we just don't have that snap to kind of thing. And and I think that everybody can grow in that, and I think that that's great. Again, a servant's heart says, "How can I help? Let me do that. What do you need me to do, and where do you need me?" How many times you have people in your life, whether they're at this church or not, that those words are always coming out of their mouth, and they're so nice to you, and they're such a blessing, and hopefully you're one of those people that uses those kinds of words. And the second principle of serving is use your gifts. Come into any situation with humility and gratitude and use your gifts. And that means any skill you have, any talents, any resources, your training, it can all be used for God's glory. In 1 Peter 4:10, it says, God has given each of you a gift from the great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. And that's not on your screens. And I was going to put up, some verses and some where they talk about that in the Bible. But instead, I just wanted to concentrate on a few just spiritual gifts that people have. And the first one is leadership. And that's because I know John's always calling for people to be leaders in this church. And to me, it always seems strange. Like, that's not who I am. Like, I don't feel like a natural leader. In fact, even if you think about it, like when I'm on the worship team, I'm sitting all the way in the back, kind of hiding. I have a nice comfy chair because I like my comforts. I have a fan pointed at me. And if anything goes wrong, I just blame Joel. So it's like, that is not the mark of a good leader. It's just who I am. So I have to work at it. And so, I say that kind of in joking aside, that's not who I see myself as. But luckily, at one point, I did get a call. I don't know if it was John or if it was God, but I do remember hearing a calling and being urged to start a small group. And I know that John has said this many times, that God doesn't always call the equipped, he equips the called. And to me, that says everything about me, because I have these fears that I have to push back when I'm starting something new. I was afraid if I started a small group, no one would show up. And so I decided, you know what I'll do? I'll have a small group at a breakfast place, because at least people like coffee, they like bacon, they'll, maybe show up and I won't be sitting there, by myself. And, and the funny thing is, just let me say, is a couple times only one other person showed up. And it was in some of the best meetings that I had. I got to know, a couple of the guys when they only came, it was just me and them, and I felt it was great. But now we have, I think maybe like 12 people in our group. So I can also hear John, saying to himself, I'm going to use Eddie as an inspiration to the other people at church. He'll say stuff like, I could hear you guys saying, if Eddie could start a small group, then anybody can. If John lets Eddie preach, well, maybe that's just John's bad judgment. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. But we should push ourselves to do things that don't make us feel comfortable, and I think that's another way that we can honor God, and it's great fun. And I mean, when you do that, it adds some, just excitement and some joy and some it kind of pushes you along in your faith, I think. So knowing your gifts is very important. Knowing what you're good at, and not just trying to shut down the thoughts that you're not qualified to do anything. You should not say no to yourself. There's so many things that people can do. It's not just about being a leader. Some people are incredibly good at caring for the sick. Some people are incredibly good at just talking to people who are just going through any kind of rough season. They just have a good ear and a good word for people. There's a gift of administration. I forgot about this one in the first service. What's great is my friend Laura, who does so much here at this church. She has a gift of administration and organization, and she clearly knows whether she'll admit this or not. I do not. I do not have that. I'm creative, so that means I don't have to follow rules and do all of this stuff. But it is amazing. She might marvel at something that I could put together, but I'm amazed at people who they catch the little things and they follow the details and they do all that kind of stuff. And so that's another way, one of the gifts that, some people are great listeners. Other people make you feel right at home. Other people make money and they are generous with their money. They're just good earners. There's just so many different ways that you can serve. And you can't, I can't say this enough, is you don't let yourself stop yourself. If you need, pray about what your gifts are, and if you need help, John wanted me to say that next month they're having another Next Steps meetings, and they're just in between the services, and you go and they talk to you and help you get plugged into the church, yes, but they also have a gift assessment, and they'll tell you how you can help the church and in which ways you can glorify God using the gifts that you have. It's really great, to get in there, and then you're not relying on yourself. You're relying on, the wisdom of the church and of God Himself. So know your strengths, know your limitations. It's funny. I was thinking about this joke. My dad told this joke, and I love it. There's a teenager who learned about serving at church, and he wanted to help his community. And so on his way home from church, he was walking, and he saw these guys from the city, and they had this huge machine, and it was the machine that paints lines down the road. So he said, "What's going on, guys?" And he said, "Our machine's broken." And he said, "Oh, I can help. He wanted to serve. And they said, "Well, what can you do?" He said, "Give me a bucket of that paint, and I'll paint the lines." And they thought he was crazy. But he kept pushing them, and they said, "Hey, if you can do it, we need it done in a couple days, but we'll give you a shot at it. And if you do it, we'll give you $100. So he said, "All the better. Now I'm making money, and I'm serving." So the first day, he gets to work, paints a mile down the road. And the guy comes back at the end of the day, and he's like, "Holy cow, you did all of this? You did a mile by yourself?" He was super impressed. He gave him $100. He said, "Come back tomorrow." So the next day, came back after the kid had worked all day, and the kid painted a half-mile road. And so, not as good, but the guy was still impressed. He didn't want to do it. So he gave him his $100, and he said, "All right, we'll see you tomorrow." So on the third day, the kid paints less than a quarter mile. And now the guy was getting a little suspicious, and he says to him, "Listen, kid, the first day you did a mile. That was good. Second day, I could live with it. You did a half mile. Now, the third day, you barely painted a quarter mile. What's going on? Are you getting lazy?" And the kid said, "It's not my fault. Each day I get further and further away from my bucket of paint. So use your gifts and don't be an idiot." It's basically what I'm saying. Anyway, the last principle that I want to talk about is finding joy in serving. In Matthew 25:21, it says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little, and I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of the Lord." I was telling First Service that I whenever I've read this, it always scared me because they give you a little to be over, and the next thing you know, you're over a lot. And not being the leader and liking my comforts, I didn't like that part. It's kind of scared me to have more and more responsibility. But the part that I do love is enter into the joy of the Lord, because there is joy, a special kind of joy that you get from serving. I think that God kind of deposits it into your bank of joy in a way that it's just not comparable to anything else. Even if you like your job or even if you like your hobby, there's something about serving people that makes you feel good. It almost feels selfish when you serve, because you know that you're doing something to glorify God. You know that the people need it, and it just feels gives you an awesome feeling. And your joy and your peace and your life will shoot up, I promise you, if you serve. Pastor Emily talked about it a couple weeks ago about getting stuck in your faith, serving God, serving people. That's a great way to get unstuck, because you're not thinking about yourself as much anymore. It's not woe's me. It's not I'm too big for my britches. I am helping other people, and it takes your mind off of everything. And I think God works in you to help you get unstuck and to raise your level of faith, level of commitment to your community. And speaking of that, this is not all just about church serving. You can serve. Where do you serve? Everywhere. Can everybody say everywhere again? Everywhere. It's not just about at church. We are having a serve day on Saturday, the 12th. A lot of people have already signed up, and we're really encouraged by that. But I would say this to people who are new to this church, or if you've been here for a while and you can't seem to feel connected, you go to a serve day and you will. The people that I see here, who I consider my friends, and I see with your faces, I set up this church. We set up on Fridays. We had serve days. We have all these different opportunities, and I get to know them more doing this than serving than doing anything else that's involved with the church. And so please do it for yourself, if not for anything else, because you will meet people. In fact, I have a funny story. Is we were joining a church a few years back, and we really liked it. And right off the bat, they were doing a serve day where they wanted people to come paint the rooms and the hallways. And so it sounded fine, like it wasn't hard work. And my wife, who's kind of like an overachiever, she took this whole hallway on herself, and there was a kind of an alarm box on the wall. So she was painting around it, whatever, and somehow it had some kind of sensors, because she swears she did not pull the lever to set off this alarm, but somehow the alarm went off, and 8 minutes later there were fire trucks with their blaring the sirens and lights flashing and all the kind of stuff. Now the great thing is, it's probably embarrassing for her. That's great for me that it's embarrassing for her, but it was great for our family, because it started where they would just kind of tease her and they would laugh at her, that she set off the alarm and she was Fire Girl or whatever they wanted to call her. But we got to know so many people. Like they knew Liza by name, and they started to know us. And so I'm not advising that if you feel not connected in here, just go pull the fire alarm. Just do something and serve in a way that works with what you like to do and what your spiritual gifts are. Also, like I said, you can serve everywhere. One more time, serve everywhere, including in your house. As a Christian, you need to find ways to serve in your house, with your spouse, with your kids. You have to make it where you're constantly thinking about like what you can do. It's so strengthens families. Between husbands and wives, you could do little things like putting gas in the tank of their car, cleaning out the dishwasher, which nobody likes to do, doing a load of laundry, just doing little things like that. I feel like when I get off my butt and I do those things, it just makes such a big difference in our everyday to-day life. And then kids, I think that it's funny because you can serve your parents, but if you're always looking for an allowance and you always have your hand out if you're doing anything, I'll tell you, when I was a kid, my allowance was, you get to live here. That's what my allowance was. You're allowed to live here, and you have a roof over your head. I didn't get paid for doing any of those kinds of things, but I do think that there's still many opportunities for kids to help. And husbands, serve your wife. I think that we all know the guys that are like, you'll talk to them and you'll say, so what are you doing for your wife for this or what is that? And they're like, well, she knows I love her. I don't really have to do anything. And if she wants something, she'll just ask. And, there's no joy in that. I mean, maybe if they did have joy, his voice wouldn't sound like this. But sorry, I don't do a whole lot of voices. So that's the one that I've got. And I pick on the husbands only because I can. But wives too. It goes all around. It just makes for a happier home if you serve each other, and do it with joy. In Ephesians, it says specifically, Ephesians 5:25 says, husbands, love and serve your wife. So not just in the household, again, everywhere. We can serve at work. And I have guys, at this church that I've overheard them or I've talked to them, and when they go to work, people know that they're Christians because not only do they spread the gospel, but they also do things in ways that they're just helpful at work with their coworkers who are probably non-believers, and they they're just Jesus's hands and feet. They go the extra mile, and they just really show out at work. I'm sorry. And I love that because, what kind of reputation do you want as a Christian is people who just go to church and they don't see it anywhere else. There's enough negativity in the media about Christians, and I think that these, face-to-face meetings that people have with their coworkers make all the difference to kind of like fight that negativity that, we may be facing. So again, we serve everywhere. Again, another place, just serve wherever you are. You just have a servant's heart. When you're running errands or going out to eat, just represent Jesus and the love for the people that he had. Open doors for people. Be helpful. Look for opportunity to serve in small ways. Pray about who and where you can serve. And do it with gladness. Don't be like that guy who's like, okay, I'll help if you need me to. That's the same guy from earlier. That's the only voice I do. But do it with joy so that people know where it's coming from. It's coming from God. I used to go, when I lived in Tallahassee and I was in college, I would go to this Burger King. I loved Burger King, and it was so super close to my house. I could ride my bike or I could walk there. But every time I'd walk up to the counter, I'd walk up And I'd wait for them to say, "Can I help you?" And they wouldn't say anything. They would just stand there. And you could tell they did not want to be there. More so than that, they probably did not want me to be there. And I just wanted my Whopper, and I just wanted to go. But it still made me feel so awkward. And there was definitely no joy and no Jesus in their service. And it used to kind of drive me crazy. I almost stopped going, except for they had 2 Whoppers for $5, so I had to continue. But it definitely was not Chick-fil-A. I'll say that, where that's one of their principles is to serve with joy. And the next slide says in Matthew 5:41, "And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with them 2." And that's called going the extra mile. And this comes from when Jesus was talking to the disciples. There was a Roman law that the Roman soldiers could force the Israelites to carry their packs and walk a mile for them carrying their stuff. And that was the limit, but Jesus encouraged the disciples to go 2 miles. It wasn't like to stick it to them or to show off. It was just saying, this is the strength that I have through Jesus Christ. This is the strength that I have through God, that I can go the extra mile. And that's where that saying comes from. It's just an amazing thing, because if you think about it, if they go at 2 miles, they're going to have to go 2 miles back, all the way back to where they were without the pack. But it's just a way of Jesus explaining to them, go beyond, go beyond, go beyond, go beyond. And so just all I can say is what better way to honor God's blessings that he has for you and the gratitude? Serving God's people is what pleases him. So be the hands and feet of Jesus. And that's what gives us freedom. And I promise you, if you have a servant's heart and you keep saying yes to opportunities to use your gifts and serve with joy, it'll make you more happy. It'll make you more whole. It'll make you more stable. It'll make you more blessed, so that you can become a blessing.
Thank you for watching today. We post new videos weekly to bless and encourage you. Thank you also for subscribing, for when you do, it helps get this message of hope around the world. If this message has blessed you, let us know in the comments and share with a friend. And thank you for your financial support. You're helping us reach people around the world for Jesus Christ. If you'd like to give for the first time, you can check out the link below. Thank you again for watching, and we'd love to invite you to join us in person as well. God bless you.